It is 2 o'clock in the morning. You got up for a glass of water and you did not turn the kitchen light on because you have learned not to. You already know what you will see if you do. You stand there in the dark with the faucet running, and your hand finds the switch anyway, the way it always does, and you flip it, and the wall moves. The counter moves. Something the size of your thumbnail runs across the back of the stove and disappears into the seam beside the burner, and two more go with it. And you do not even flinch anymore, because this is the fourth night this week. You have a cabinet under that sink with 3 different cans in it. The orange one was $11. The blue one with the spray nozzle was $14. There is a black plastic disc glued behind the trash can that the box swore was guaranteed, and it cost you $9 for a pack of 6, and you have put down all 6, and the roaches walk over the top of them like they are part of the floor. You have spent, and I want you to actually add it up sometime, you have spent somewhere north of $60 this summer alone trying to win a war in your own kitchen, and you are losing it in your own house in the country your grandfather helped build. And every single one of those cans was sold to you by a company that needs you to lose. Not wants, needs. Because a man whose roaches are gone does not come back to the store. My name is Gideon Beiler. I am Amish. I live on a farm in Lancaster County that my family has worked since 1849. And in all the years of my life, and my father's life, and his father's before him, there has never once been a cockroach living in this house. Not one. Not in the pantry where we keep flour in open bins. Not in the cellar where the potatoes sit all winter. Not behind the cookstove where my wife bakes 9 loaves of bread every Saturday morning of the world. We do not own a single can of poison. We have never paid an exterminator. And our kitchen, where 4 generations have eaten 3 meals a day with the window propped open to the barn and the chickens and everything that crawls, is cleaner of vermin than yours is with $60 of chemicals stacked under the sink. I want to tell you why. I want to tell you what my grandmother kept in a tin on the highest shelf of this kitchen, what her mother kept in the old house before the fire, what the women in my community still mix up by hand in a wooden bowl every spring. And I am going to tell you the part that ought to make you angry, which is that none of this is hidden. None of it. It is written in books 100 years old. It is sold in every hardware store in America for less than the price of a sandwich, sitting on a shelf 6 feet from the expensive cans. And the man who sold you the expensive cans will walk you right past it and never say a word. You were never told. By the end of this, you are going to know exactly what to buy this weekend. You are going to know it costs about $2. And you are going to know precisely why the man who sprays your neighbor's house for $90 a month would rather you never heard my name. Stay with me. This is the most useful 20 minutes you will spend all year. The first thing you have to understand is that everything you have been taught about killing a roach is backwards. You have been taught to kill the one you see. That is what the spray is for. You see a roach, you spray the roach dies, you feel like you won. You did not win. You did the single worst thing a person can do, and I will tell you why in a moment. But first you have to understand what a roach actually is, because if you do not understand the animal, no method on earth will save you. A cockroach is not a dirty animal that lives in dirty houses. That is the first lie, and it is the one that makes good, clean, decent people feel ashamed and keeps them buying in silence instead of talking to their neighbors. I have been in spotless English homes that were overrun, and I have been in barns you would not eat off the floor of that did not have a single roach in them. A roach does not care about your dishes. A roach cares about 3 things, and only 3. Water, darkness, and a crack to hide in. That is the whole animal. Take away any one of the 3 and the roach cannot live there. The expensive sprays do not touch a single one of the 3. They kill the roach standing in the open, the one dumb enough or desperate enough to be out where you can see it, and they leave the other 200 sitting in the wall behind your dishwasher, where the spray never reaches, breathing, drinking, and laying eggs. And here is the thing the can will never tell you. For every roach you see in the light, there are between 30 and 50 you do not. That is not a figure I made up to scare you. That is the arithmetic of the animal. When you see one in the daytime or you see one out in the open with the lights on, it does not mean you have a roach. It means the cracks behind your walls are so full that the weak ones are being pushed out into the open to starve. By the time you see one, you do not have a roach problem. You have a roach city, and the one you saw is a refugee. So you spray it, and the spray, the orange can, does something the company is very glad you do not understand. Most of those sprays are what is called a repellent. They do not just kill, they stink to a roach, like fire smells to you. So when you spray along the baseboard, you do kill the few that walk through it. But the hundreds in the wall smell it, and they do the most natural thing in the world. They run away from the smell. They scatter. They split off into rooms that had no roaches before. They move into the walls of your children's bedroom, into the back of your closet, into the cracks behind the bathroom tile. And there, this is the part that should make you set the can down forever. Frightened roaches breed faster. It is a stress response. You spray, you scatter them, you stress them, they multiply, and 3 weeks later you have roaches in 4 rooms instead of 1, and you think the spray stopped working. It did not stop working. It worked exactly the way it was designed to. It turned 1 problem into 4, and 4 problems sell 4 times as many cans. We never made that mistake, and I will be honest with you about why. It is not because we are wiser than you. It is because we could not afford to be wrong. When you cannot run to the store, when the nearest hardware is a buggy ride, and your money is needed for seed and shoe leather, you cannot waste a season fighting an enemy the wrong way. You have to understand the animal, because the animal is the only thing that will teach you the truth. We learned it the way you learn anything in my community, not from a book, but from a grandmother's hand on your wrist, showing you how much to mix. Now I am going to tell you what is in the tin. It is a fine white powder, and it has been used to kill insects in this country since before your great-grandfather was born. It is called boric acid. I want to be plain with you because plainness is the one thing I can give you that the can never will. This is not a secret Amish herb. It is not magic. It is not something my people invented in the old country. It is a simple mineral compound. It has been sold in American pharmacies and hardware stores for over 100 years, and it costs about $2 for a box that will last you the whole season and most of the next one. The secret is not the powder. The secret is that almost nobody alive still knows how to use it the way my grandmother used it, and the companies that sell the $11 can have spent 50 years and a great deal of money making sure it stays that way. Here is why it works when nothing else does. And once you understand this, you will never be fooled by a spray again. Boric acid does not repel a roach. A roach cannot smell it. A roach will walk straight through it without the slightest alarm, the way it walks over your floor, and that is the entire genius of it. The roach gets the fine powder on its legs, on its belly, on the little hairs that cover its whole body. And a roach, like a cat, grooms. It cleans itself constantly, and when it does, it swallows the powder. Once it is inside, the boric acid does 2 things at once. It tears at the waxy coating on the roach's shell from the outside, which dries the animal out, and it poisons the gut from the inside, so the roach can no longer take in water. Remember the 3 things a roach must have: water, darkness, a crack. Boric acid takes away the water from the inside of the animal. There is no spray on earth at any price that does that. But the killing of the 1 roach is still not the part that matters. Here is the part that matters. And this is the part the exterminator hopes to God you never learn. A roach does not die where it ate. It carries the powder home. It walks back into the crack in the wall where the colony lives, into the dark, warm seam behind your dishwasher where the 200 others are waiting, and it dies in there, among them. And a roach, I am sorry to tell you this at the dinner hour, but you need to know it, a roach will eat its dead. The colony feeds on the body of the one that died, and in doing so they swallow the powder that killed it, and they carry it on their own bodies deeper into the nest, to the ones that never came out, to the egg cases, to the breeding females that never leave the dark. 1 roach can carry the death of a dozen back into the wall. This is what the men in white lab coats call secondary kill and tertiary kill, and they have written long papers about it. And you can find them in any university library with the names of serious men signed at the bottom. We just call it letting the roach do the work for you. The spray kills the one you see. The powder kills the ones you will never see, in the place you can never reach, using the roaches themselves as the delivery. That is the whole difference. That is the entire war, won or lost, right there. Now, I told you 24 hours, and I am a plain man, so I am going to be plain about that number too, because I will not lie to you the way the can does. You will see dead roaches within 24 hours. I promise you that. You will lay this down tonight, and tomorrow morning there will be bodies on the kitchen floor that were not there before, and within a day or two you will see them out in the open in the daytime, staggering, dying, driven out of the wall. And I know that is grim, but to a man who has fought this, those daylight bodies are the most beautiful sight in the world, because it means the colony is collapsing from the inside. But the whole nest, every last egg case and breeder, takes 2 to 3 weeks to die out completely. Any man who tells you a roach city of 200 is gone in a single day is selling you something. I am not selling you anything. I am telling you that in 24 hours you will know it is working, and in 3 weeks they will be gone, and they will stay gone for about $2. The can cannot make that promise. It was never meant to. So here is exactly what to do, in order, this weekend. The first thing is the powder itself. Go to any hardware store, any pharmacy, any big store with a garden section. Ask for boric acid, or look for it near the laundry powders. Sometimes it is sold as a roach powder already, and sometimes it is the plain mineral, and either will do. Buy the cheapest plain one. You do not need the fancy box with the cartoon roach on it. You need the $2 one. While you are there, buy one more thing. A small jar of powdered sugar, the confectioner's kind, if you do not already have it in the house. That is your whole shopping list. $2, maybe $3 with the sugar. The second thing is the bait, and this is where my grandmother's hand on my wrist comes in, because the mixing is the part everyone gets wrong. The boric acid is the poison. The sugar is the invitation. A roach will not go out of its way for plain powder, but it cannot resist sugar. So you mix them, and listen close, because the proportion is the difference between a trap that works and a pile of powder they ignore. You want about 1 part sugar to 3 parts boric acid, not half and half. If you use too much sugar, the roach eats the sugar and leaves the poison behind, the way a child picks the marshmallows out and leaves the cereal. 3 parts powder, 1 part sugar, mix dry in a bowl with a spoon you will throw away or wash well. The sugar gets them to eat it. The powder does the rest. Some of the women in my community do it a second way, and it is even better for the deep cracks. You take the same boric acid and you mix it not with dry sugar, but with a little sweetened condensed milk, the thick, canned kind, just enough to make a paste like wet sand. You roll that paste into little balls the size of a pea, and you tuck them where I am about to tell you. The paste stays moist, and a roach needs water more than it needs anything, so the moist bait pulls them in from farther away. Dry bait for the open runs, paste for the deep dark seams. Use both. The third thing, and this is the thing 9 out of 10 people get wrong and then swear the powder didn't work, is where you put it. You do not pour it in a pile in the middle of the floor. A roach does not cross open floor in the light if it can help it. It runs the edges, the seams, the dark. So you think like the animal. You put a thin line of the dry powder, thin, a dusting, not a drift, because a roach will walk around a thick pile but straight through a fine dusting. You put that thin line along the backs of the counters, behind and under the stove, behind the refrigerator, under the sink in that dark, wet cabinet where the pipes come through the wall, along the baseboards behind the trash can, inside the lower kitchen cabinets at the back where they meet the wall, and into the gap behind the dishwasher if you can reach it. The paste balls go into the actual cracks, the seam beside the stove burner where you saw them run, the hole where the pipe enters the wall under the sink, the corner of the cabinet, behind the outlet plates if you take them off. You are not trying to make your kitchen pretty. You are trying to put the death in the doorway of the house, so they carry it home themselves. And here is the one rule that undoes everyone. It must stay dry. Boric acid is wrecked by water. If you dust it under the sink and then you mop and splash it, or you put it where the dog's water bowl drips, it clumps and dies and does nothing. Put it where it is dark and dry and they travel, and leave it there. Do not sweep it up in 2 days because you got impatient. Leave it for 2 to 3 weeks. Refresh the lines once a week. Let the animal do the work. Now I have to stop and say the plain, hard thing, because a man who tells you only the good part is no better than the can. Boric acid is poison. That is the whole point of it. It is far, far less harmful to you than the sprays under your sink. You can hold the box, you can mix it. A little on your hands washes right off, and it has been in American homes for a century. But it is not candy, and you are mixing it with sugar, which means it looks and smells like something a small child or a dog or a cat would want to eat. So you put it where they cannot reach, behind the appliances, inside the backs of cabinets you can latch, in the dark seams, never out on the open floor where a baby crawls, never on a counter where food is prepared, never in a bowl a pet could knock over. If you have little ones who crawl or a dog that noses into cabinets, you keep it sealed behind closed doors, and you tell the grown-ups in the house where every bit of it is. Used with that one piece of sense, it is safer than the can. Used carelessly, anything is dangerous. I would not be doing right by you if I did not say it twice. Now, while the powder is doing its work in the walls, you take away the other 2 things the animal cannot live without. Because the powder kills the colony, but a clean, dry house is what keeps the next one from ever moving in. This is the half my grandmother cared about more than the killing, and it is the half no can will ever sell you, because there is no profit in it. Take away the water. A roach can go a long time with no food. It cannot go 3 days with no water. So you go through your kitchen at night after the last dish and you make it a dessert. You dry the sink bone dry with a towel before bed. Every night, this is a habit, not a chore. You fix the drip under the sink. The slow drip from a pipe is a roach's drinking fountain, and it runs all night. You wipe the condensation off the cold water line. You put the dog's water up at night, or you set it on a tray of soapy water so they cannot reach the rim. You empty the drip tray under the fridge. A house with no standing water at night is a house a roach cannot hold, no matter how much food you leave out. Take away the darkness and the cracks. This is the part my grandfather would have called the real work, and it is the part that lasts. A roach lives in the seam. So you go around your kitchen with a flashlight on a Saturday, early, before it is hot, and you look at it the way the animal looks at it. The gap where the counter meets the wall. The hole where the pipe comes through under the sink, big enough to put your finger in, which to a roach is the front door of a cathedral. The crack behind the baseboard. The seam where 2 cabinets meet. Every one of those is a house for the enemy, and you close them. Not with anything expensive. A tube of caulk is a couple of dollars, and a roll of fine steel wool stuffed into the pipe holes before you caulk over them is a few dollars more. And a roach cannot chew through steel wool the way it chews through foam. You spend 1 Saturday morning and $3 closing the cracks, and you have taken away the 3rd thing the animal must have, and now there is nowhere for the next colony to ever set up house. The powder won the war. The caulk keeps the peace. Now let me tell you about a man, because I think a story will land harder than all my explaining. 3 summers ago, an Englisher pulled his truck up my lane. He had heard about us from somebody in town, and he stood in my barnyard turning his hat in his hands, embarrassed, the way a proud man gets when he has run out of answers. He owned a little restaurant 2 counties over, a diner, the kind with a counter and stools and pie under glass. And he told me, almost in a whisper, that he was 3 weeks from the health inspector shutting his doors, because no matter what he sprayed, no matter which company he paid, the roaches came back into his kitchen at night, and a customer had seen one cross the floor at breakfast, and word travels in a small town faster than any roach. He had spent, he told me the number, and I will not repeat it, but it was more than I spend to feed my family for a year. He had spent it on 3 different companies in 18 months, and he was losing his living over an animal the size of his thumbnail. He thought I was going to tell him something mystical. I told him about the $2 box. I watched his face fall because cheap sounded like an insult after all he had paid. I mixed him a jar of it right there at my own kitchen table, 3-to-1 with sugar, and I drew him a picture on the back of a feed receipt of where the cracks would be behind his stove line and under his 3-bay sink, and I told him to dry that kitchen bone dry every night after close and to leave the powder be for 3 weeks, no matter how it tried his patience. He called my brother's store 9 days later, and my brother walked the message out to me in the field. The man said that on the second morning there were bodies along his baseboards, and by the end of the first week, the daytime sightings had stopped cold, and that very morning he had passed his inspection clean, not a single live one found. He told my brother he had stood in the middle of his empty diner at 6 in the morning and cried like a child, because he had nearly lost everything his father built to a problem his grandmother could have fixed in an afternoon for the price of a cup of coffee. He sends a Christmas card to this farm every year now. My wife keeps them in the drawer by the bread box. That is what $2 and a little patience did against thousands of dollars and 3 companies in trucks. I am not telling you that story to boast. I am telling it so that when the cheap thing sounds too cheap to be true, you will remember the man who thought the same and wept over a feed receipt. And while the powder is doing its quiet work in the walls, there is one more old thing I will give you for nothing. And I will be honest about exactly what it does and does not do, because I will not let you down the way the can does. It is the bay leaf. The same dried leaf my wife drops into a pot of beef and barley. A roach despises the smell of it. Now hear me plainly. A bay leaf will not kill a single roach. Any man who tells you it will is wrong. But a roach will not happily live where it smells. And so you tuck a few whole leaves, crushed a little to wake the smell up, into the backs of your flour bin and your sugar tin, into the drawer where you keep the bread, into the dark corners of the pantry shelves. It is not the army. The powder is the army. The bay leaf is the fence you put up afterward, so that the few stragglers that wander in from outdoors find your pantry an unpleasant place to settle and move along to somebody else's house. My grandmother kept flour in open bins her whole life, with bay leaves laid among them, and never lost a cup of it to vermin. It costs pennies, it makes your cupboard smell like Sunday dinner, and it harms nothing in your house. Use it the way you would a good fence, not instead of winning the war, but to hold the ground after you have won it. That is the whole of it. $2 of powder, a jar of sugar from your own shelf, a tube of caulk, and the sense to dry your sink at night. Under $10, all told, against the $60 you have already spent losing. And it does not run out, and it does not stop working, and no man in a truck has to come back every month and hand you a bill. Now I know the questions forming in your mind, because my brother keeps a small store in town where the English come in, and he tells me what they ask. The first question is always, if this is so simple and so cheap, why have I never heard of it? Why didn't my mother know it? Why didn't the man who has sprayed my house for 2 years ever once mention a $2 box on the shelf 6 feet from the cans he sells me? And I want to answer that plainly, because it is the heart of the whole thing. I do not believe there was a meeting. I do not believe men in a room agreed to hide this from you. It is something quieter and in a way worse than that. It is that every single person who touches this problem makes money only if it continues. The spray company makes money when the can fails and you buy another. The store makes more margin on the $14 can than the $2 box, so the $2 box goes on the bottom shelf and the can goes at eye level. The exterminator makes $90 a month for as long as the roaches come back, and a roach that is truly gone is a customer who never calls again. Nobody had to conspire. They only had to stay quiet and let the cheap things sit on the bottom shelf and let the knowledge die with the grandmothers. And it nearly did. The second question is whether it is safe. And I have already answered that, but it bears saying once more for the mothers listening, because you are right to ask, and I will never wave the question off. Yes, used with sense, kept behind closed doors and away from small hands and pets, kept off the counters and out of the open. It is gentler on your home than the chemicals you are already living with. The danger is in carelessness, and carelessness is dangerous with anything. Put it where they travel and you do not, and you are safer the day you start than you were the day before. The third question is the one that makes me a little sad, and I will speak to it directly. Some of you will tell the man who sprays your house what you heard from an Amish fellow on the internet, and he will smile and tell you it is an old wives' tale, that it does not work, that the modern chemicals are far more effective, that you get what you pay for. And I want you to hear me very carefully. He is not lying to your face on purpose. He was taught what to say by a company whose living depends on your can being empty next month. The very fact that the thing is cheap is the reason he calls it worthless, because in his world, cheap means weak, when the truth is the opposite. The strongest thing in your kitchen war costs $2, and the man who tells you it cannot possibly work is the same man who will hand you a bill again in 30 days. I am not saying he is a bad man. I am saying he was taught wrong, by men who were taught wrong, by a company that was very glad to teach it. You are at the end of that long chain. You do not have to stay there. I want to leave you with something my grandmother said, the woman who first put my hand in that bowl of powder when I was a boy of 7. We were in this very kitchen, and a neighbor woman had come to her ashamed, whispering, because her house had roaches, and she thought it meant she was a dirty housekeeper, and she had cried about it. And my grandmother took her 2 hands and said this. She said, "Child, the bug does not come because you are dirty. The bug comes because the world is full of bugs, and a house is a warm, dry place, and that is all there is to it. There is no shame in it. The shame is only that they have made you spend your egg money on poison in a can and made you too proud to ask your neighbor what works. Ask your neighbor. We have always known. We just stopped telling each other." I have thought about that many times, because she was not only talking about a roach, she was talking about everything you have been made to feel ashamed of and pay for in secret. Everything your grandmother knew for free that you now rent by the month from a company that did not exist when this house was built. They did not take the knowledge from you all at once. They took it the way they take everything, slowly, one expensive can at a time, one bottom shelf at a time, one ashamed and silent neighbor at a time, until you were standing in your own kitchen at 2 in the morning, afraid to turn on the light, $60 poorer, in a war your great-grandmother would have won in an afternoon for the price of a loaf of bread. I am not asking you to live the way I live. I am not asking you to give up your truck or your lights or your church for mine. I am asking you to do one thing this weekend. Go buy the $2 box. Mix it 3-to-1 with sugar. Lay it in the dark seams where they run. Dry your sink before bed. And then come back here and tell me, in the comments, what you found, how many years you have been fighting them, how much you have spent on the cans, and how fast the bodies showed up on your floor. I read every one of them. The stories you send back are the reason I keep recording at this kitchen table by lamplight when the rest of the house is asleep. And if this rang true to you, if you are the kind of person who has long suspected that the simple, cheap, true thing has been quietly pushed to the bottom shelf so somebody could sell you the expensive substitute, then come back, because the next thing I want to show you is how my grandmother kept ants, every last one, out of a pantry with open sugar and open flour, using nothing but a line of one ordinary thing you already have in your spice rack, and the place where the ants told her, themselves, to put it. Once someone shows you, it is the simplest thing in the world. Nobody will show you. I will. Stay clean. Stay curious. And remember, the people who built this country with their own 2 hands knew things we are only just beginning to remember.